Have you ever looked at the news and seen those mind-boggling numbers about national debt? Trillions of dollars. It makes you wonder, right? If almost every country on Earth is in debt, who exactly do they owe all this money to? Mars. It feels like a giant, confusing paradox. But what if I told you it's not as mysterious as it seems, and understanding it is key to understanding how our world works? Stick with me, and we'll unravel this global IOU together. First, let's get one thing straight. National debt isn't like your personal credit card debt. When you're in debt, you owe money to a bank or another person. When a country is in debt, it's a bit more complex. They owe money to a whole variety of lenders. Think of it like this. A government is like a massive corporation. It has huge expenses, building roads, funding schools, maintaining a military, paying for healthcare, and providing social security. Often, the money it collects from taxes just isn't enough to cover all these costs, especially during a crisis like a recession or a pandemic. So, what does the government do? It borrows. It does this by issuing something called bonds. A government bond is essentially a formal IOU. You, me, a corporation, or even another country can buy a government bond. When you buy a bond, you're lending the government money. In return, the government promises to pay you back the full amount after a certain period. CIDs, or 30 years. And along the way, it pays you regular interest. It's an investment for the lender and a source of funds for the government. This is the primary way countries go into debt. Now for the big question. Where did all the money go? Well, it went right back into the economy. That borrowed money is spent on public services and infrastructure. It pays the salaries of teachers, firefighters, and government employees. It funds scientific research, builds hospitals, and repairs bridges. During an economic downturn, governments often borrow more to stimulate the economy. They might cut taxes or send out stimulus checks, all funded by borrowing, to encourage people to spend and keep businesses afloat. This is a concept championed by the economist John Maynard Keynes, who argued that government spending, even if it means going into debt, is necessary to fight recessions. Think about the massive spending that occurred worldwide during the 2008 financial crisis or the recent pandemic. Governments had to borrow trillions to support unemployed citizens, help businesses survive, and fund vaccine development. Without this borrowing, the economic fallout could have been far more devastating. So, the money didn't just disappear into a black hole. It was injected into our society to keep the gears of the economy turning. It's a tool used to manage the country's economic health, smoothing out the rough patches. So, who are these mysterious lenders holding all the debt? It's not some shadowy global syndicate. A huge portion of a country's debt is actually owned by its own citizens and institutions. This is called domestic debt. Your pension fund, the bank where you keep your savings, and even individual investors like you and me, we all might own government bonds. In a way, the country owes the money to itself. For example, in the United States, a significant chunk of the national debt is held by Social Security and other government trust funds. The government is essentially borrowing from these future payment pots. But of course, countries also borrow from international sources. This is called external debt. The lenders can be foreign governments, international corporations, or global investment funds. For instance, China and Japan are two of the largest foreign holders of U.S. debt. Why do they do this? For them, U.S. government bonds are considered one of the safest investments in the world. The U.S. has a long history of never defaulting on its debt, so lending it money is a reliable way to park their cash and earn a steady return. This creates a fascinating web of global financial interdependence. So, if everyone is borrowing and lending to each other, is this debt even a problem? Well, it can be. Like any debt, it's all about your ability to pay it back. The key metric to watch isn't just the total amount of debt, but the debt-to-GDP ratio. GDP, or gross domestic product, is the total value of everything a country produces in a year. This ratio compares the country's debt to its economic output. A low ratio is healthy, but if the debt grows much faster than the economy, it can become a problem. Why? Because debt comes with interest payments. The more a country owes, the more it has to spend each year just servicing that debt, paying the interest. This is money that could have been spent on education, healthcare, or scientific research. If interest payments become too large, they can crowd out other essential government spending, creating a difficult choice: raise taxes, cut services, or borrow even more just to pay the interest. It can become a vicious cycle. This is especially dangerous for developing countries. They might have to borrow in a foreign currency, like US dollars. If their own currency loses value, their debt effectively gets much larger overnight, making it incredibly difficult to repay. This can lead to a debt crisis, where a country is unable to pay its bills, causing economic chaos and hardship for its citizens. We've seen this happen in countries like Argentina and Greece. This is why organizations like the International Monetary Fund, or IMF, exist to step in and provide emergency loans, but often with strict conditions attached. But for major economies like the US or Japan, the situation is different. Japan, for example, has a debt-to-GDP ratio of over 250%, the highest in the world. Yet, it hasn't collapsed. Why? Because the vast majority of its debt is owned domestically by its own citizens and its central bank. It's like borrowing from your left pocket to pay your right pocket. And because the US dollar is the world's primary reserve currency, there is always a huge global demand for US bonds, allowing it to borrow at very low interest rates. This gives it a lot more wiggle room than other countries. So, in summary, countries go into debt to fund everything that makes a society function and to manage the economy through tough times. The money doesn't vanish. It's circulated back into society as spending on public services, infrastructure, and economic stimulus. This debt is owed to a mix of domestic and foreign investors, including regular people, banks, pension funds, and other governments. Is it a ticking time bomb? Not necessarily. National debt is a powerful tool. Used wisely, it can foster growth and stability. But if managed poorly, it can become a heavy burden that limits a country's future. It's a delicate balancing act between spending for today and ensuring a sustainable future for tomorrow. The real debate isn't about eliminating debt entirely, that's probably impossible, but about managing it responsibly. So, the next time you hear about the national debt, you'll know it's not a simple story of a country maxing out its credit card. It's a complex, global system of IOUs that underpins our entire modern economy. It's the price we pay for stability and the investment we make in our future. Thanks so much for watching. If you found this breakdown helpful, give this video a thumbs up. And do not forget to subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do not miss our next deep dive. Let me know in the comments what other big economic questions you'd like me to tackle. See you in the next video.